And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everyone, it's Ryan Metzler here again, and today we're going to take a look at another abstract game from Nestor Games, which come in these cool little canvas bags. This one represented by an L. We're going to take a look at the Battle of Lits, which is a two-player abstract, kind of a cross between Battle of Wits and the name Fitz, or I guess Lits in this case. But it reminds me of the game Fitz by Knizia. This game you're going to have tetrominoes, and you're trying to place them out on a board to either protect your pieces or your areas on the board, either X's or O's, or to cover up your opponents. Actually, both. So you want to protect your own and cover your opponents. And whoever manages to do this best will be the winner. So real quick, why don't we take a look at what you get inside this little canvas bag and how the game plays, and then we'll come back here and get my final opinions on Battle of Lits. So here you can see the components for Battle of Lits. Now this is a game, seems to me probably based on the concept of Fitz, but is going to have a different play style. So what you see on this roll-up mouse pad board here, which I like a lot as usual, is 4 different boards for the game. So each one of these different squares, which are 10 by 10 squares, are going to be different boards you can use in the game. So it just has 4 different variants printed right on here. Now, what you'll also have is different pieces in different shapes. You have the tetrominoes, and there's 5 of each of them in L, I, T, and S, Lits. So the players here are going to be trying to keep their letter, X or O, open without having them covered up. But the other player, of course, is going to be trying to cover theirs up without having their own covered. So at the beginning of the game, one player chooses a letter, the other player is the other letter, and then X always gets to go first. So what X is going to do is they get to take any piece on the start turn, the first turn, and place it however they want. So they can place it out here if they wanted to cover their own, or they could try and cover equally, however they want to do this. But let's say they place it out like this. Now O has a choice, and this is the only time they can make this choice. They can choose to switch letters with the other player. Maybe they don't think this is a fair starting position. Maybe, X, thinking that they'd be all smart, decided to cover all these O's. Well, maybe O doesn't think this is fair. They decide, hey, I'm going to take X. And at that point, you can switch. But after that, you're stuck with whatever letter you want. If you do switch, the player that started gets to play again, now is the other letter. But if you didn't switch, you would continue on in turn order. So now O would go. And the rules of the game are pretty simple. Every time you place a tetromino, you have to place it so that one of the edges is touching a previously played tetromino. So, for example, let's say O wants to go now. They could place this, in theory, like this, because it's touching a previously placed tetromino. In doing this, they've made the rule that they have to touch one, and they've also avoided another rule. So the other rule is that you can never place 2 tetrominoes of the same type edge to edge. So like this can't be done. These 2 tetrominoes can't touch like this. Not allowed. But if you ended up in a scenario where they were like this, that would be okay. Now, the goal here is obviously to keep your pieces uncovered, and you want to use these pieces to your advantage to try and set up scenarios where you can cover up some of your opponent's pieces, and they can't play off of it to cover up yours. So, for example, maybe, X now plays this piece out like this. Well, that doesn't really stop O from doing anything, because O can still play any of these shapes. In particular, they can play this one right here to cover only X's. And in doing so, they've protected this O. It now can't be covered because there's no piece that fits in there. And so you're going to keep playing on in this manner, trying to cover your opponent's pieces and protect your own pieces. And as I said, you want to use pieces to your advantage. So maybe if you block it off in a specific way, you can't get your pieces covered. So, for example, if somehow O were to get a piece like this, there's really no piece they can put in here that will cover all of these different pieces. So they might cover a couple O's in the process, but now they've protected these 3 O's because this piece can't go here, and it's going to be safe. So it's all about minimizing the effort minimizing the ability of your opponent to place over your own pieces. And you're going to keep going on in this manner, placing whatever pieces you can and want to in order to cover your opponent's pieces and protect your own, until you can no longer place a piece on the board, until no one can place a piece on the board. So you're going to end up in scenarios where you have to place a piece that maybe you don't want to. Maybe it only covers your own letters. But whatever you have to do, you're going to try and plan out as best as possible to keep the most of yours open, and if at the end of the game you happen to have the most open, you are going to be the winner. Well, there you have it. That is the Battle of Lits from Nestor Games. A kind of simple but cool little 2-player abstract. I like it. I thought it was quite a bit of fun. It's very quick. It takes, a couple of minutes to play and there are the 4 different boards, it's going to be a little bit different each time depending on the starting piece that your opponent plays or that you play, and maybe your opponent switches to that. And I kind of like the balancing factor of if the opponent starts with too good of a move, I can just take over the board. But if I decide not to, then I'm stuck with what I have for the rest of the game. There's a little bit of a balance between trying to cover up your opponent's pieces and trying to protect your own. There may be a move that's better for you that doesn't cover any of your opponent's pieces and maybe even covers some of your own, but kind of prevents your opponent from covering a lot of pieces later, because I failed to mention, but you can't actually ever create an area of 4 spaces that are completely covered. So you can never put a piece out so that it covers 4 adjacent spaces, a square. And if that ever happens, well, you just simply can't place that piece. So if you play properly, you can block off areas where your pieces are protected and your opponent simply can't place a piece in order to get to the spots that you're protecting. So that's really kind of interesting. All in all, it's kind of a cool new take on a relatively old concept of area control. I think it's quite interesting, one that you should definitely check out. That is the Battle of Litz from Nestor Games.
Thanks for watching our review today. For more information about board games, as well as the #1 board game audio podcast, check out Dicetower.com for reviews, interviews, and more. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.